Doc is back. Welcome to Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis, hosted by Tyrone Robertson. Join Doc and his guests as they discuss healthcare and the Caribbean community every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on caribcast.tv, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most other popular podcast platforms.
I didn't grow up here, but Broward County has become home to me. This is where I settled. I raised my family here and started my practice here. For over 20 years, I've represented my neighbors, people who needed help in a stressful time. If you find yourself in need of an attorney, reach out to someone you can trust, someone with a proven track record.
When a car accident or personal injury sets you back, call Scott McCullough.
954-989-3435.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis. Doc.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, Corona looked like it getting a little better.
Just a little.
But I had to wait with this Labor Day thing. We're waiting to see what happens.
Yes,
so
yes.
We'll see. But, it's probably going to work itself out, because that is what a lot of if you remember Ebola.
Yes.
It just started on its own, going on. As a matter of fact, that's what Mr. Trump had predicted, because people had told him that's how viruses work. True, not this virus.
This one threw a curveball.
These are serious viruses
Yes.
we're dealing with here. But eventually, viruses work themselves out for a while, and then they become seasonal, meaning the flu season. All viruses that even resemble the flu, that's their season too. so
let us hope this one doesn't have its own season and it just goes away.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to have some version of it, but certainly, hopefully not as virulent as this one.
Yes.
And we have made some strides, so we'd be able to probably handle it a little better next time.
All right. So, Doc, let me tell you what's been going on here now.
Mm-hmm.
Our show has been getting some traction.
Okay.
On social media.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
The word is now spreading. Some of your old listeners have now discovered that the show is available.
Oh, so they
as a
catch up with me.
Yes, sir.
Right.
They are now following you. So, the ladies.
Yeah, always the ladies.
Always. It's all about the ladies.
Yes, man.
And they are very appreciative of the topics that we have discussed thus far.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this one topic that seems to impact most, if not all, Caribbean women that we've come in contact with.
I would answer that question, but let me hold it. I almost sure I know what you are going to say, because there is such a thing, almost like a little something that plague
Really?
Caribbean women,
Well,
especially Jamaicans.
All right.
And black people.
All right. Well, I'm going to blurt it out now.
Right.
Fibroids.
Of course. That's an easy question. If they ask me that on an exam, I'll kill them. Everybody know that.
Really?
Yeah.
So it is something that is prominent amongst Caribbean.
It is the truth. I'll tell you how it goes. It's mostly common in parts of Africa. I think South Africa is one, and of course West Africa, where all of us come from, it's extremely high. And apparently Jamaica get a double dose. So Africa first, then Jamaica is the most... fibroids are so common, it's unreal. I'm willing to guess that the majority of women in their 40s and 50s, Jamaicans have some kind of fibroids. Many of them don't even know. So it's definitely genetic, and it doesn't mean it's not like sickle cell, where only black people get it. That's a different kind of genetic disorder.
Okay.
That is where we know the chromosomes, we know the genes. There's another kind of genetic where you can't prove anything from DNA or genes, but if you look at the pattern of how the disease runs, you realize they must have some genetic connection. That's what epidemiologists do. You must be hearing that with coronavirus.
Yes, frequently.
All they do is study patterns of how diseases go. and they can draw conclusion. As a matter of fact, let me tell you how important it is. There was an epidemiologist almost 20, I can't remember. Actually, it's my son who showed it to me, Wayne. When Corona first started, an epidemiologist more than like almost 20 years ago predicted that this pandemic will come. What
Really?
make it even weird? He called the coronavirus. And you want to make it even more weird? He called the year. Now, and all he did was to follow the patterns of how viruses, especially flu virus and coronavirus, went around the world. And he could that's why Bill Gates kind of knew too. And that's why Obama now could tell you we could expect something like this again in 10 years' time. It may not be the same corona, but it might be some virus is going to be the next enemy, We are not going to be fighting wars with guns and bombs. Those days are over. Why? Because we all could kill out each other if we start the war.
Yes.
But you can sneak in a virus and kill out a whole nation and protect yourself.
Which some conspiracy theorists believe is what is happening right now.
What I believe, the difference with me, what I believe and the theories, is they think people started out to do harm with it. I do not believe that. Now, were they experimenting with the coronavirus? Probably. Mm-hmm. Are we in America looking into some viruses? Of course. Because the way we're looking at it is not to hurt other people, but to get ready in case they try something on us. Right? And that's happening it's happening all over the world. The question is, was this a genuine flu virus that come through animals, or was it that they were experimenting it in the lab, not necessarily to give it to any nation, but to be able to protect themselves against it? And it comes out, you've heard of the powder. Remember where we had anthrax?
Anthrax. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they studied anthrax and still studying anthrax up to this day. So, but this thing that it was planned and this people let it loose and this group of people they're trying to kill. No.
All right. Fair enough.
All right. Yeah. So I know I jumped off a little bit.
That's okay.
You're looking a little nervous over there because you know me. I might go down that track.
And we can't reel it back in. But remember, I've been practicing. So, back on track.
All right, good. Okay.
So, back to the fibroids now, Doc. So, let's start us off by telling us.
Well, actually, I got misguided there. I started off with how I would like to start off. There's a genetic tendency to it. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean only black people get it. Like sickle cell, that's different. Mm-hmm. We know the gene. We know why it developed. Something to do with malaria and all of that in Africa. Mm-hmm. This is one by epidemiology. We notice that certain ethnic groups tend to get it more. Whites have it, but not half as much as blacks.
Okay.
And we tend to have larger fibroids and more symptomatic fibroid. Big word I use. Mm-hmm. What kind of symptoms are the fibroids causing the female? And the two most common symptoms is excessive menstrual bleeding and pain, especially at the time of the menstrual period. But you can also have pain intermittently. When they're small, it's mostly during the period. As they get larger, and then you can have pain even in between the period because it's growing so fast that sometimes the blood supply can't keep up with it. And that causes pain. All right. But when we look at subsets now of black people, mm-hmm. Africa seemed to have the highest. Then Jamaica is second. Then the rest of the Caribbean third, and then African Americans in this country. So we have a much higher weight in the Caribbean. The amount of people that get it. And secondly, the size of the fibroids tend to be bigger in these subsets. Therefore, the symptoms of abdominal pain and excessive menstrual bleeding is a sign in almost... First thing I hear, like when the students presenting to me, they think I'm a genius. Because they come, okay, Dr. Alex, we have a case. We call the name MJ. You don't call old people name.
Mm-hmm.
Doc, and she has some severe bleeding. And, the pain is getting so unreasonable. I said, tell me something. Is she black? They all think I'm just... How did this guy know that? And I never let them know my secret. I want them to think I'm something special. But statistically, I am... If you say black, when it's fibroids, you're about 90% sure that you are correct. All right? That's why we're calling it genetic. It's not genes that cause the disease, but certain genetic patterns seem to have this disease.
What about Europeans, Asians?
It's not... that's why Jamaica is beating me up. It's not cultural. White people get it, but get it much less than black people and have less symptoms than black people. And Jamaica, of all the black people I know other than African, have the biggest, and it is extremely common in especially Jamaica, but all of the Caribbean. And then after that, anywhere you find black women, it's a problem.
Okay. So question then, are there different kinds or types of fibroids?
Yes, but the types is not tied to any race or culture.
Okay.
Right? What differs with race and culture, other than the frequency with which it hit our population, is the size. Mm-hmm. To give you a little idea, if you could use imagination, is that there a uterus that does not have fibroids. If you look at the small one, it's about the shape of a 60-watt light bulb. I always say that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now imagine you are putty of all kinds of sizes and you're sticking on this smooth thing. So when you look at it, you see this grotesque, bumpy stuff. We tend to have the big ones. When white folks have it, it's like guinea seed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When we have it, it's like soccer ball.
Okay.
And it's like grapefruit and watermelon sometimes. Right? And so that is the point. We tend to have them bigger, and we tend to have them more symptomatic. In other words, more bleeding, more pain. Everyone who has it get bleeding and pain, but we tend to get a little more. So we get anemic from the menstrual bleeding. Okay.
You had mentioned this before, but let's talk again about the age groups that typically see.
Right. Let me back up a little bit. We have learned recently that these things don't suddenly develop when you're 40 and 30, and that's the age group where you tend to see it most. 30, 40, very large and common during the childbearing years. But we have found out now that this thing actually starts when they're teenagers. But it is so small, you can't see it. The patient, the little young lady has no complaints with it because it's not big enough. But over the years, they grow, and they grow, and they grow. So by the time they're 40, it begins to manifest itself in pain or a big lump in your abdomen. And there are a lot of distressing symptoms that the women have when they have fibroids. And I'm sending a message to the men. Right? When they get, depending on where they are located in the womb and the size of them, they can cause painful sexual intercourse. Mm-hmm. They can cause heavy bleeding, where the last thing a woman is thinking about when she's having that pain and bleeding is sexuality. Mm-hmm. Or not even sex, but even going out to dinner or going out to a party. So I've seen where in relationships, the men really do not understand because the woman looks fine to them. And it's something that women don't talk about openly. As a matter of fact, a lot of them talk with it more with the doctor than they would ever mention to them.
That's part of the purpose of this show.
Yeah. To let the guys know.
Of course, to let everybody know.
Yes, and it can be a miserable pain that a woman silently goes through.
All right. Well, Doc, we have now come to the end of first segment of our show for this episode.
All right, don't forget, I know, but don't forget that to give you some treatment options when we come back. All right, I thought you're done with me on that subject.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
For excellent surgical care, call Dr. Ralph Guarneri's office at 954-462-8714. Dr. G is a general surgery specialist, experienced in surgery of the stomach, liver, spleen, pancreas, and gallbladder, to name a few. Dr. Guarneri also specializes in trauma and transplant surgery. Schedule your appointment with Dr. Ralph Guarneri today by calling 954-462-8714. That's 954-462-8714.
Please send your requests for topics or questions by email to questions@cacpros.com. That's questions@cacpros.com.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, to Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis. New episodes available every week on your favorite podcast platforms. Thursday morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So, Doc, so how does a lady know if she has fibroids?
Very good question. I think one of the early symptoms is a lengthening of the number of days of her menstrual period. Not heaviness. If you're having your period for 4 days, normally, and all of a sudden it starts to come 5, or it starts to come 6, and also get heavy at the same time. The more...
Hold that thought, Doc. Ladies, I want you to remember a few episodes back we spoke about using the app or the calendar or a little notebook to make note of what's going on with your menstrual cycle.
You're quite right. And get a symbol for heavy, get a symbol for light.
All right.
And then you could go back and bring out your book and tell me when you come to see me, look, Doc, I was seeing it for 4 days up to January. Boy, February was like 5. And then by the time you reach August, Doc, is 7. So it's a lengthening of the number of days of bleeding. And it so happens it tends to get heavier too. That's usually one of the earlier symptoms.
Okay.
Pain tend to make its presence a little later because pain is related to growth and the bleeding is related to growth. But it seemed like the bleeding tend to come a little earlier than the pain. When the pain begins to come, it's a signal that the fibroid is growing fast.
And is it a type of pain? Is it a shooting pain?
All right, very good pain. Very good question. Number one is, when does it occur? People with fibroids tend to have pain early in the formation of the fibroids during the menstrual period, an increase in the amount of pain that the person normally has. Then as the fibroids get bigger and bigger, and by the way, the pain is dull. People say like it's not one way, cramp you and go away. In the beginning, it's a crampy pain. In the beginning, like menstrual cramps. But as the fibroids get bigger, in between your periods, you tend to get this dull pain in one portion of your belly. And many times, if the fibroid's big enough, you'll begin to see an increase in the girth of your lower abdomen. When that starts to happen, they're really big. I hate to say this to you ladies, but some of our people kind of overweight these days. So we really can't tell if it's fibroids or weight. But let me tell you why I bring that up. A lot of women with little fibroids, like a lime, come in and say, Doc, yeah, that's the reason why my belly's so big. No, your belly is likely to be big for weight. Right? But I've seen them big enough that they look almost like a soccer ball protruded. But for it to have an effect on the size of your abdomen, they have to be extremely large. Yeah. So again, the pain is dull. I mean, during the period, it's crampy. But in between periods, you may begin feeling this dull pain that comes, stays there a while, stays annoying pain, I call it. and then go away, and then they come back again. And as the fibroids get bigger, the pain gets worse, the bleeding gets heavier.
Okay. So, are fibroids cancerous?
Okay. Small percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Very small. So much so we don't even consider it. The 2 or 3 I've seen, and I mean I've done literally hundreds of thousands of fibroids in the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen 2. And the problem is we can't tell it from the symptoms, and I can't even tell it when I'm doing the surgery. You know, I usually find out 4 days later. The pathologist call me when they cut up and say, Winston, by the way, you know, this lady have some cancerous changes in the fibroids. But it's little concern. If I only see 2 cases in about 50 years, and most of the time you can't make the diagnosis before anyway. So it really doesn't come into play until after we have given the specimen to the pathologist. He might look and say, hey, and then we have to go back and do a little touch-up job on it. Yes. Then when I get down to therapy, I'm going to explain to you how we deal with cancerous fibroids, even though they are rare. Okay. We have a plan of action in case a pathologist tells us this. But it's not the normal order of things in fibroids.
Okay. And where do fibroids fit into pregnancy?
All right. Now, we used to believe that fibroids interfered with fertility. We have found out that's wrong. How did we find out? Almost every Jamaican woman over the age of 30 who pregnant have fibroids. So if there's one thing I show off, fibroids doesn't stop anybody generally from becoming. However, occasionally the location of one of the fibroids may be in an area where it blocks the outlet of the tubes. And you know you need your tubes for the eggs to go. Gotcha. But that's rare. Most of the times it doesn't. What it does, you get pregnant with them, it might make your life a little more miserable in the early months. Why? They tend to increase in size temporarily during pregnancy. And as they increase, the pain gets bad. And that usually go on for about 4 months. And then they stop growing and the pain subside. And by the way, it's not a permanent growth. Once the pregnancy is delivered, within 6 weeks, it goes back to its original size. So the only importance of the growth of the fibroids is the extra pain that it causes pregnant women in the first 3 to 4 months.
All right. So last question before we get into treatment. So fibroids on a whole, are they there for a reason? No.
It's a growth.
Okay.
All right? They have different growths. Even though we think growth means cancer, wrong. Growth is any increase in the size of an organ or a part of an organ.
Gotcha.
Now, cancerous growths are different, right? They call that cancerous growth. They have a name for it, neoplasia, which means new growth.
Okay.
And versus a benign mass or a benign growth. All right? So these are benign growths, meaning they almost never become cancerous. And it was amazing. The name fibroids is not medically correct. The real word is leiomyomas. Let me tell you what that means. Fibroids means it's fibrous tissue. Right? We have a type of tissue called fibrous.
Right.
Right? Connective tissue, almost like where you see coconut, the fibrous tissue in between. All right? And we thought was that form in it because it was so hard and firm and gritty. We found out later on it's muscle growth. Muscle, the uterus has muscle. How else would it get the baby out? It contracts. And only muscle contracts. So the fibroids, which is a wrong word, but we have used it so much that the muscle cells begin growing We don't know why. Right? And by the way, each fibroid is only one cell. Muscle cell that grow and make 1 billion like itself.
Okay.
Right? It's not different muscle cells getting big. So each fibroid represent a special lineage of muscle cells that seldom become. So number one, even though we call them fibroids, there are nothing fibrous about it. It turns out to be muscle cells.
Well,
but
medical terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, we make up these terms, and then later on we find out we're wrong and confuse up ourselves. When you see in book, fibroids doesn't exist in books, it's leiomyomas. But people have said it. Let me give you another example. Remember we talk about infertility?
Yes.
We don't tie tubes anymore. We cut out a piece of it. But what do we still call it?
Still call it tying the tubes.
Tubal ligation, it will be too hard to change it in the literature. Yes. So this is one where fibroids is not really a good explanation to what the person have, but all of us, as I tell you, in my textbook, if you're looking for fibroids, you're in trouble. You ain't going to see it. Right? Yeah, but the key, again, that you bring is the symptoms are related to the growth of the fibroids, the tumors. And as they grow, what happens, believe it or not, they're growing too fast for the blood that's feeding them. Just like a heart attack. When blood cannot go anymore to the muscle of the heart, what happens? You feel pain. In this case, nobody's blocking it, but it's growing so fast it can't keep up with the growth. And because of that, they begin to get... That's why I'm saying when you get pain in fibroids, they are growing. That's what makes them painful. Yeah. Right? So the symptoms may be mostly bleeding with little pain, or it may be mostly plain with little bleeding, or more often, it's both. Right? And needless to say, Jamaican women tend to have what? Both.
We're Jamaican women.
No, listen, man. We good with other things. Yes, you're a fast bolt runner thing. So, listen, we have our own little good things and our own. And by the way, it's a non-cancerous growth. To me, it's better than worrying about breast cancer and fibroids.
Agreed. And it gives them a little excuse now to carry a little more around the midsection. As men, we don't have that excuse. You try to
get me in trouble. I never use those language in my office to my patients. I was just making a point. A point that I never make in my office.
Well, let us keep it that way.
Like what we say, Doc, maybe that's why my belly getting big. I say, well, I ain't too sure about that, you know. I don't tell anybody's food. No, I don't really think about it. I think that it shows differently.
So, Doc, let's talk some about the various treatments and therapies.
All right.
For
Right.
fibroids.
Number one, because it's not cancerous, there is no rush.
Okay.
Right? Anybody who tell you, look, you got to come in for fibroids tomorrow, let me do the surgery. Crap. All right, we do the surgery to get rid of the symptoms. Right? All right. However, there are two options. There is one, actually there are many options. Maybe I should go on. We can give you medicine to see if we can cut down the bleeding, if bleeding is your biggest problem.
Okay.
If pain is your biggest problem, we can give you medicine to cut down the pain. All right? The problem is, they never completely take care of the problem. They may help, right? But they don't stop it from growing. And many times, even though it may briefly slow down the bleeding, it's going to come back again.
Gotcha.
So it's unfortunate that the temporary things we can do only give you temporary relief. One of them is hormones to see if we can slow down the bleeding. Pain medicine to see if we could cut down the thing. However, once you stop using those things, it's going to come back again. One other thing we can do, we can surgically remove the fibroids and leave the womb in place. Especially for young people who want to go on with childbearing. But guess what the downside is? They will come back. So that's the decision we have to make.
Yeah.
So this is why, let me give you a prime example of how the judgment goes. We try a little birth control pills to see if we can slow down the beat. We give you ibuprofen to see if we could stop the pain a little bit. Make it manageable. It ain't going to cure it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we give all of that, it helped for a while, and then it's getting worse. All right, we have judgments to make. If it's a young woman, 20, 24, with no children, we certainly don't want to take the uterus out.
Right.
She still have childbearing.
Mm-hmm.
So those we tend to be conservative. I will take out the fibroids and say, sweetheart, the bleeding is going to go away. The pain is going to go away. But guess what?
It's coming back.
So go and have your children soon. Because we don't take them out twice.
Okay.
Why? The job gets 3 times as hard with each time you have to go back. Right? Let me tell you something about surgery. In general, anytime you mess with how God make the inside of your belly, it'll never be the same again. Right? When I surgically open my abdomen, everything is usually in place. The bowel where it's supposed to be, the womb where it's supposed to be, the bladder, the ovary. Oh my God, we take pictures. I could just take my hand and by the way, when a woman stands or even laying down and we make an incision into the abdomen, you can't see the ovary or tubes or uterus. It's all covered by bowel. Because your bowel fall down on top of the pelvic organs. But guess what? I could now take my hands, push the bowel up into the upper abdomen, block it with what we call some laps. Now I could see everything. I do my surgery and I go, but guess what? When we have to go back in, this thing that I sweep away don't move. It attached to everywhere or some of the places where I've done the surgery because I mess with Jesus' business. So when we're trying to get the bowel out now, we have to separate it. And many times you could poke a hole in it. Mm-hmm. Right? That's why when we do myomectomy, we do it sparingly. We do it only because it's not curative. Right? It could give you temporary relief. Hopefully you could have a family. But the second time we go back, it is more risky than when we do it the first time. So what we tend to do, we only believe in leaving the uterus in for one who wants to have childbearing. Okay. Now, don't do like a lady who come to me. And by the way, she wasn't Jamaican. And a lady come and tell me, I said, well, when we look at it, how big these, and by the way, the bigger they are, the more bloody is removing the fibroids and leaving the womb. Because when you remove the womb, we tie off the blood supply before you cut anything. In this one, we have to poke it up. If we tie off the blood supply, the uterus is going to die. So we have to take out all these lumps while it's bleeding and then so on. So blood loss is much more common in myomectomy, removing the fibroids. So we reserve that for somebody who deserves a child, somebody who needs to have a child. But this woman was about 53 years old. About 7 children, and tell me she wants to leave the womb. So, Doc, what about pregnancy? I said, what are you talking? Unless you have a direct line to Jehovah, and he tell you, like the Virgin Mary, you will have a immaculate conception. Oh, children is out. So the point is, the older the woman, the more she's out of the childbearing age, the more we tend to remove the entire womb. And I need to tell guys, don't panic when you hear that. I have some good news for you down the road. Number 1, the woman have nothing to do with sex. Let me repeat that.
Important.
Last thing I remember, you need a penis and you need a vagina. You need no womb. Okay. So a lot of women come and say, oh, my husband say I ain't going to be the same. Nonsense. What is different, though, if you remove the ovaries, like we used to do years ago, the ovaries, you lose your womanhood, not the womb. Because the ovaries is what make you estrogen. The ovaries is why your hair long and mine short. why you behave the way, why you have breasts and I have none, your desire, your enjoyment, orgasm, all of that have to do with hormones, not the womb.
Okay.
I have a good piece of news for you. Remember Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yes.
Never had a womb.
Okay.
So I'm saying you can still look good and behave good even without a uterus. That is one of the biggest things that have plagued me over the years, trying to convince women. And by the way, it's not usually the woman is the problem. The husband. Or you ain't going to be the same. The guys are misinformed. Correct. Remember what Dr. Alexis said? You need a vagina, you need a penis. You do not need a womb to enjoy sex the best you could ever.
All right. And again, the reason that we have this program is to share this information with men and women. It's not just for the ladies, fellas. Listen up, tune in every week.
Yep, but I have news for you. When I used to do the radio show,
yes,
most of the listeners were guys.
That's right.
Because they want to find out what is going on.
They want the inside scoop.
Yeah, but like one person once tell me, I say, well, all right, how are you doing? What is wrong with you? My husband tell me, come and see you. I say, your husband, what? She tell me he played doctor. He telling me what wrong with me and then tell me, by the way, at the end, when I finished with her, he was right. So she begged me, she said, Lord God, Dr. Alex, don't tell him he correct.
After listening to any program with your doc, we can all play a doctor.
The lady said, no, he going to try to tell me everything. Please don't tell him he was correct.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis. New episodes available every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on your favorite podcast platforms. Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to send us your questions by email, questions@cacpros.com. Again, questions@cacpros.com. We'll be right back.
Urosurge Associates is a full-service urology practice in Plantation, Florida, with 3 board-certified urologists offering expert care in most disciplines of general urology. At the helm is Dr. Paul Kahn, who is board-certified in urology, a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, and an expert in robotic surgery. As a proud Jamaican American, Dr. Kahn attended medical school at the University of the West Indies and completed his residency at the University of Miami-Jackson Memorial. Since 1983, Dr. Kahn with his dedicated team have been committed to providing the best possible care to patients. Call 954-474-2929 to schedule your appointment today. That's 954-474-2929.
Please send your requests for topics or questions by email to questions@cacpros.com. That's questions@cacpros.com.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, to Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis. So, Doc, after hearing all that you've had to say so far in this episode, I think it is important to mention again that after having a hysterectomy, the woman is still all woman, right?
Until you take her ovaries out. I tell you, it's similar to me. Right? I had my prostate removed. But nobody's taking my testicle.
All right.
Because the testicle is what make my testosterone. Nobody ain't taking that from me. Same thing with the woman. It's the ovaries that's the magic bullet. Those 2 little things that look like 2 little eggs about the same size. That carries everything that make the woman a woman.
All right.
Right? And this is why when women when doctors tell them hysterectomy, they have to ask them what. They try to say partial and total, you get confused.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask nothing but partial. Ask, are you going to remove my ovaries? And if he say yes, so you have to say, hold up a minute. Why? Because the old school we used to do it until we learn better. So somebody, well, I was going to say older doctors, but I'm not exactly younger. some of the older guys were trained to take out the ovaries in every woman over 40 years. Now we are finding out women don't go through menopause until they're about 50, 51. And even after menopause, they still make some hormone. Not enough to produce a period, but enough to still make a woman a woman. So now it's off limits. When I operate on a woman, unless they're like 90 or 80 years old, or 70 maybe, unless something is wrong with those ovaries, I leave them alone. And that's what women need to be asking the doctors when they're going for hysterectomy. I'm an older woman.
Right.
Not believing. And they tend to say they have total hysterectomy. But total hysterectomy doesn't mean the ovaries. Total mean you take out the entire womb. And the womb has two parts. The bulbous part, that's called the fundus. That's where the fibroids are. And then the stem portion is where the cervix is. The part that I could do the pap smear on. When you say partial, you take the bulbous part, but you leave the part like the stem.
Okay.
But women mean total is when you take out both the cervix and the womb. Women think total mean you take out everything, ovary, everything wrong. So that's why I don't let them get into what's total, what's partial. Are you taking out my ovaries? Is the question they need to be asking. And if anybody say yes, they better give you a real good reason if you're under the age of either 50 or less.
Okay. So the key thing there, though, is has been a common thread amongst all the episodes that we've had so far. Is communicate.
Yeah.
You know, talk to your physician.
Right.
Get clear, concise
right.
definition of what is being done to you.
Right. And the Caribbean man.
Well, no, that is the next part.
Need to understand, right, what the women are going through. I'm glad they're listening to this so they could understand. Your woman had a hysterectomy. She's still the same.
That's right.
Only two things can't happen. She would not have a period anymore, and she'll never be able to bear a child. Everything else remains the same. And the guys beat up on them, you know, because a lot of the women refuse because they say, I don't know what my husband. So you know what I do many times? You have to bring your husband, you know, let me chat with him.
That's right.
Right? And I mean, they've done several studies. Actually, they did one study that showed that women who had hysterectomy, but the ovaries were left, them enjoy sex more than when they were having the symptoms, because it was interfering with their sexual activity. If they're bleeding too much and they're having pain, that they actually felt better and enjoy sexual encounters better by removing the womb and all the tumors with it, but leaving the ovaries alone. Just remember this, guy. The woman ovary is like your testicle.
All right.
Right? That is what you got to remember.
So be open. Don't be afraid to have these discussions with your woman. And women, don't be afraid to have these discussions with your man.
Right. And Tyrone, I don't think men know how much. Just bleeding in all time and heavy, how miserable that makes a woman. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want to go in public. She don't want to go to work. And especially pain. And you know what is wrong with the pain? People would look at us, but you look normal. With this pain, what pain you talking about? You could still go to vet or you could still have sex. My belly hurting me. And the guys are not sensitive to the fact that women with fibroids, most of the times, if the fibroids are symptomatic, meaning they cause bleeding and pain, has a miserable experience. They're experiencing some terrible things that you have never experienced yourself.
All right. So one of the other things about this program is, again, the communication, speaking about things that have been taboo, you know, but most importantly is, again, getting good health care, navigating the system, finding the right physicians for the right symptoms, for the right ailments and such. We have been very fortunate that we are now seeing some support, which you would have heard in the advertisements before. And, you know, one of our supporters now is Dr. Khan.
Yeah. And by the way, he's been after me for years. I think he went on the program I had before once before. He volunteered this time. And believe me, Paul has a big enough practice. He doesn't. He's a Jamaican who happens to be lily white. When I saw him, I couldn't believe it was down at Jackson. By the way, he trained in UWI and was a special student there. Then he came up here to Jackson. That's where I met him, where he specialized. Basic education, medical school in UE, and then come up here to do his specialty. I met him, I have to give this joke, I met him at Jackson. I was down there teaching. And it's a whole bunch of Caucasians, and don't talk about Cuban connection down in. So I was there lonely one day in between cases. I'm teaching the residents. Lonely, and I hear this Jamaican twang. So I said, Jesus, I have somebody to talk to. I look over my shoulder, and it's pure white people. Most of them have blue eye. I said, what? Oh, somebody must was in the closet getting a broom or some damn thing. And I turn around and I hear it again, and I look back, and there's a lily white man talking to me. So I said, listen, you from Jamaica? He said, am I from Jamaica? He said, born and grew in Kingston.
Okay.
That's how I met Paul Kahn. While he was doing his specialty training, lo and behold, he was an excellent urologist training, as far as I know. And one day, when I started to get my little prostate problem, I said, something? Let me give Paul, he has his own practice. Let me go and give this guy a look up. And I go into his office, and I see a big picture, a certificate on the wall. I said, what? Is that correct, Paul? He said, yeah, I guess so. He made the highest score in the United States of America on the urology board. Me talking about Florida, He beat Harvard, the highest score.
Wow.
You hear the kind of quality we have in our community, and I have news for you folks. You better learn to find them. That is part of what our project is here. To seek out excellent people. That's and right. We have many of them. Hopefully soon we have a vice president. Hey, let me stop. I ain't talking. That's a joke. I ain't talking no politics before they kill me, But we had a secretary of state. We had an attorney general.
Yes.
And yet we're not getting credit for it, guys. That don't make sense.
Yes.
Organize our community. We have a lot to give this country. Look at Paul.
That's right.
Right. And by the way, that is one of the way I don't like people to call me African American. Because Jamaicans come in all color, size, same thing with Trinidad, most of the Caribbean. So we have more a cultural thing. That's why I like Jamaican American. I like Trinidadian American. I like Caribbean American.
That's right.
Because our culture is more important than color.
That's correct. Because
of the diversity we find in our country, and I would have it no other way.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
And please advise these people who are listening to this. These people who you see, we take ads from on this thing. You can't just call us and get an ad on the station, We do the inviting.
Yes.
And the vetting.
Yes.
So I could tell you with a great deal that these are excellent people in their fields, and they care about us.
That's right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for this episode of Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis. Don't forget to send your questions to us by email. questions@cacpros.com. Any question medically related, please send them to us. questions@cacpros.com.
Because what I did before, what I will do again, first of all, I know a little bit of everything in medicine. Why? Because in the old days when you trained in everything first, and then you specialize. Right? So we have a more country doctor training. Your country doctor in Jamaica.
Oh, everything.
Or to pull out your toenail, your teeth, cut out your appendix. You know that whole time. The newer one goes into super specialization. Soon as they finish medical school, they go directly into their line of study.
Yes.
So what I would do most of the times, and what I did before, if a question reaches me that I can't answer easily, I go and do some research and find out from my colleagues what is the answer to that, and then I come back at another show. So even though we're talking primarily OBGYN, if you have a question that like for instance, we discuss high blood pressure, we discuss diabetes, that we may be able to give you some input.
And also, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a specific topic that you would like us to highlight one of our episodes on, again, let us know. All right? We look forward to hearing from you. And until next time.
Guys, be nice to the ladies. All right, next time too.
All right, take care.
Right.
For the absolute best obstetrics and gynecology care, call South Florida OBGYN at 954-452-4377. Schedule your appointment today with Dr. Winston Alexis, who has been serving the women of South Florida for over 25 years. Conveniently located in Plantation, Florida, the courteous and professional team at South Florida OBGYN are standing by to assist you. Schedule your appointment today by calling 954-452-4377.
We appreciate your time with us on Medically Speaking with Dr. Winston Alexis, hosted by Tyrone Robertson. Join us next Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on caribcast.tv, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most other popular podcast platforms. Doc is back. Although the host and guests are qualified professionals, they assume no responsibility for inaccuracies, omissions, inconsistencies, and any slight of people or organizations. Listeners should use their own judgment or consult an expert or their personal physician for specific applications to their individual medical problems.